The numbers are in, and Stats Canada has released their annual report on crime severity index across Canada. And in this video, I'm going to be going over what some of those major and surprising changes were, as well as what the top 10 or bottom 10, should we say, cities are on that list. So to get started, we first have to understand what the crime severity index is and what it means. So let's go over a brief overview. So here's the article that we're going to be going over today, which essentially summarizes the Stats Canada findings. So these 10 cities are the top of Canada's latest crime severity index. So the agency's findings, I will put a link in the description if you'd like to see the full report, but it shows that the crime severity index increased by 2.1% in 2023, following an upwards trend that started in 2015. However, Stats Canada notes that there were relatively large shifts in particular types of crime, which resulted in an increase in the non-violent CSI category plus 3%. In contrast, the violent CSI remained virtually unchanged. So non-violent crimes up, violent crimes barely, just slightly up. So of course, no crime is good, but we definitely don't want to see the violent crimes go up significantly. Compared to 2022, violent CSI in 2023 saw lower rates of homicide, which is a good news at least, and sexual violations against children, more good news. However, there were high recorded incidents and rates of extortion plus 35% and robberies. So I assume for extortion, with the rise of AI and all these new technologies and ways for people to take advantage of, especially the elderly or those who not even necessarily are in a compromised potentially state, but I've seen stuff they can mimic voices. It's just incredible what this technology is able to do, incredible yet scary. So definitely something to be made aware of. If you don't already within your family, it's very important to have safe words that essentially, if you were to get a call, because I've seen this in the news where people are actually getting a call, they've cloned the child's voice from videos on the internet, on your social media, wherever that may be, and they're able to basically make it sound like your kid is kidnapped and they're crying and they're asking you to send money or something of that nature. So have a safe word within your family that you'd be able to ask for, to question in the rare circumstance that you get into this situation, just so that you're not going to be taken advantage of. But I digress. Let's move along. So how do you actually understand the crime severity index, which is going to be important? Stats Canada explains that the conventional crime rate and the CSI are two complementary methods to measure police reported crime. The crime rate measures the volume of crime per 100,000 people and includes all violations in the criminal code except traffic violations. Definitely fair. The CSI measures the volume of relative severity of police reported crime in Canada, including all criminal code and other federal statute violations. Stats Canada notes that the CSI was established to address the limitation of the police reported crime rate being driven by high volume but relatively less serious crimes. To determine severity, each crime is given a weight based on its incarceration rate and the average length of prison sentences assigned by criminal courts. Therefore, more serious crimes are weighted higher than those less serious in nature. So essentially, they are assigning some sort of a score to different sorts of crime. Of course, if you are doing some sort of petty theft, you steal a bike from a backyard, that is not going to be rated anywhere nearly as highly as stabbing somebody out in the open. So essentially, this is what they're doing, and that is how they're coming up with their numbers. So let's move on. We'll be starting at number 10, moving down to number 1. Pick some cities that you think in your head right now and see if you're right at the end of it. And actually go to the comments right now. Let me know before we move on with the video what you think is going to be number 1. Let's get right into it. Number 1, we have Abbotsford Mission. So this one's kind of interesting just in the way that they have tied the two together, because Abbotsford and Mission are separate cities in BC, but definitely known for having higher crime rates in certain areas. Personally, I would say that Mission is worse than Abbotsford, and generally it's the downtown core where you're going to find this around the commercial space, but intense spot is the region of Abbotsford Mission with a 23% increase in CSI to 107.6. Its crime rate also saw a significant increase from 2022 with a 15% bump in 2023. This translates to 6,725 crimes per 100,000 people. So definitely something I would have assumed for BC. Canada-wide, it's always hard to know, but Abbotsford Mission coming in at your 10th spot. Coming in at number 9, we have Regina, Saskatchewan. I'll probably get absolutely roasted for the way I say that. But anyways, I have not been here, so I can't speak much on it. But the capital of Saskatchewan is in 9th place on the list. It recorded a crime rate of 7,988 per 100,000 people, a 3% increase from 2022. Its CSI also experienced a 1% change to 111.6 in 2023. So Regina in number 9. And then number 8, another Saskatchewan city, is Saskatoon. So in 8th with a CSI of 116.3, slight 1% drop from 2022. The crime is up 5%. Recorded at 8,730 per 100,000 people in 2023. Again, personally haven't been to Saskatoon, can't speak much on it, but this is what the data says. Moving on, number 7, Kelowna, BC. This is another city where I could actually live in Kelowna. I could see myself in the future potentially living there. It's a beautiful city. I absolutely love it. However, parts of the downtown core, there is a high level of homelessness, which typically attracts higher levels of crime. And that is how it puts itself onto this list. I definitely personally feel that Kelowna is a better place to live than Mission or Abbotsford, which are above, but it has nothing to do with my opinion. This is just the stats. The popular summertime vacation city in BC is in 7th place with a CSI of 118.6 in 2023, which is down 6% from 2022. So crime rates are coming down, which is a good thing. The crime rate in the city is 9,423 per 100,000 people, which also dropped by 9%. So headed in the right direction, but still not looking great across the country based on the statistics. Moving on to number 6, Nanaimo, or as I hear some people call it, Surrey by the Sea, which I always think is a bit of a funny name for it, but I'm assuming it has that name for a reason. So the Vancouver Island city of Nanaimo was 6th in 2023. It recorded a CSI of 125.5, 2% decrease from 2022, so headed in the right direction. Its crime rate is 10,200 per 100,000 people, seeing a 9% dip. So even with this 9% dip, it is still in place number 6. I've been in Nanaimo, didn't really spend a lot of time there, never really felt unsafe, but in certain areas, you're going to see the homelessness, you're going to see a little bit more rough areas per se, but you get this in most places in Canada. Surprised how high it is on this list, to be honest with you. Definitely, once again, thought it would be there for BC, maybe in the top 10 towards the bottom end of that. Again, in BC, not across Canada, but hey, the numbers are the numbers. Number 5, Lethbridge, Alberta. So Lethbridge in number 5 with a CSI of 129.1, which is a 7% increase from 2022. So heading in the wrong direction. Its crime rate is 9,376 per 100,000 people, 1% dip from 2022. So obviously there has been a higher severity rating of this types of crime. Once again, personally, haven't been to Lethbridge, know people that have lived there. Sounds like there's not a ton to do. Most of the people I know were playing for the baseball academy over there. And essentially what they had told me was that you basically play baseball and you go to the bar and that's about it. And school, of course, if you're in university. But usually in cities like that, that can tend to get people into trouble because there's not a ton to do. And then you involve alcohol, drugs, anything else. Never a good mix. Moving on to number 4, Winnipeg, Manitoba. And in all honesty, I actually could have seen this being in the top 3. So I'm interested to see what is above this. In 4th place, Winnipeg, Manitoba, the city reported a CSI of 129.1, a 6% drop from 2022. So that's good news. Its crime rate is 8,193 per 100,000 people, which is a negative 6% change. Also headed in the right direction from 2022. Can't say much about Winnipeg, haven't been there myself, but from a lot of people that I talk to that do live there, that know about it, have visited, they don't typically have great things to say outside of the home prices are fantastic, but it's winter all year long. When you actually look in the news and hear about other things, which again isn't the be all end all, Winnipeg is generally one of the spots that doesn't have the greatest reputation. But again, just looking at the numbers, it's not somewhere that I've been or can really have a huge opinion on, but just passing on information that others have given to me. So in 3rd place is Red Deer, Alberta, which reported a CSI of 146.9, an 11% decrease from 2022, headed in the right direction. The city's crime rate also dipped by 8% from 2022 and is 12,765 per 100,000 people. So again, not familiar with Red Deer, can't say too much about it. Moving on to number 2 though, we've got Chilliwack, BC. A little bit surprised to see it this high on the list. Again, this is a city that I actually know quite well. I live about 45 minutes to an hour outside of it. I help clients purchase homes there quite often. And there is definitely a bad part. The downtown core is pretty brutal. And I'm going to assume that it makes up for most of the crime here. But it's a pretty condensed zone. There are a lot of parts of Chilliwack that are absolutely beautiful, super low crime rates, super safe, low levels of homelessness. But when you get into that core, it's not good. Probably one of the worst that I've seen outside of East Hastings in Vancouver. But yeah, it's definitely somewhere where you kind of don't necessarily feel the safest, especially when you're getting into your car and someone yells at you, yeah, you better make sure you lock that car, because that was a true story. It did happen to me. Again, this is only in a very select portion of Chilliwack. It's a very small part of it. The rest of the city is absolutely beautiful, but Chilliwack, BC is second with the CSI of 156.2, up 24% in 1 year. That is not something you like to see. Its crime rate is 11,615 per 100,000, 17% increase compared to 2022. This looks like the largest increases that I've seen so far. So again, not something you want to see, but please don't let this completely scare you away. You just really have to know where you're going in this city. If you get it wrong, you're not going to be happy. But the outskirts, up the mountain, essentially getting towards the edges of the city away from the highway typically is going to be your best bet. But always happy to have a further conversation if that is something that you are interested. And moving on to number one city, what do you think it's going to be? Well, let's find out. Kamloops, BC. Honestly, this one was a little bit shocking to me. Know Kamloops pretty well, have family there. Again, like many of the other cities, it's got kind of that downtown core aspect of it where you're going to get more homelessness, you're going to get more crime, a little bit more grungy part of the city per se. But again, there's other more rural parts of it that are beautiful, have, you know, great neighborhoods, have never really felt unsafe there. I have a decent amount of family that actually lives there, spent a lot of time in my childhood and go and visit them there. And so honestly, to see this at number one was a bit surprising. Again, in BC, would it be top 10? I could see that. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. But to be number one in Canada? I don't know. Again, this is just what the numbers say. I do have a bit of an opinion on it, but facts don't care about feelings. So Kamloops is the highest CSI with 165.3, a 10% increase in 2022. Quite a large increase as well. The city's crime rate is 13,116 per 100,000 people, which dipped by 2%. There you have it. Those are the top 10 highest or lowest ranked on the crime severity index across Canada. Honestly, a little bit surprising. Didn't see much from out east. Don't really know why that is, to be honest with you, but I would have assumed there'd be at least a couple of cities out that way. Didn't see anything, of course, from the Maritimes, nothing from Ontario, nothing from Quebec. Seemed to be all in the west. There was definitely a few cities that I expected to be on there that weren't. There was also a few cities that were on there and made a lot of sense to me, but not necessarily their positions. But as I said multiple times throughout this video, those are the facts, that's the data. We have to take it with a grain of salt though, I think, and look into it a little bit more, because one of the things that isn't discussed, or I haven't discussed yet, is the fact that the only crimes that make it into this list are the ones that are actually reported to police. So in communities where maybe they are reporting crime to a higher extent, those numbers are gonna go up, right? Versus other places where maybe they just don't even bother to report these incidents because it's such a commonality, or, for a variety of other reasons, it's not going to impact the data or the stats. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Which cities did you expect to be in this list? Which ones were surprising? Do you think they got them all right? Or which ones were wrong? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, all I ask is that you hit that thumbs up button so that the algorithm will push it out to more individuals just like yourself who want to learn more about BC and Canada, as well as the real estate market. If you don't already know, my name is Alex Dunbar and I'm a local realtor in the Surrey and Langley areas in BC, and I make videos just like this one every single week covering everything you need to know about the BC and Canadian real estate market, as well as showcasing community tours across the Lower Mainland. So if that's something you're interested in seeing more of, I suggest you consider subscribing to our channel. And if you are looking to make a move in my marketplace of Surrey, Langley, and the rest of the Fraser Valley, or you just want to talk about real estate, you can scroll down and click the first link in the description to book a call with me at a time that works best for you. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you check out another video on my channel before you get out of here, and we'll see you in the next video.